Congress is about to vote on a new law that, if passed, directly connects voting and immigration. If you're an immigrant, a green card holder, or a naturalized citizen, you need to understand what the SAVE Act means for you. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what the Save America Act does and how it relates to U.S. immigration. Particularly, what are the real consequences of non-citizens who have registered to vote and who have actually voted in violation of federal law. Hi, I'm Jake. I'm the head attorney and founder of Visa Law Group, an immigration firm in the state of Utah. If you have any questions about your immigration case, we have an eligibility form in our About Us YouTube description page. Feel free to check that out and click the link. If we can help you, we will. All right, let's start with the basics here. What is the Save America Act? What does it mean? How does this apply to U.S. immigration at all? The Save America Act stands for the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. This was sponsored by Representative Chip Roy of Texas and Senator Mike Lee of Utah. The House of Representatives is scheduled to vote on this next week. So I remember Mike Lee talking about this. I'm a resident here in the state of Utah. I can recall him talking about this last year. So this is a different version of the bill that Senator Lee spoke about in 2025. So this new version adds something significant that was not in the previous version. This is a photo ID together with original citizenship verification documents. All right, let's talk about what the Save America Act would actually require. Number one, it would require everyone to provide proof of citizenship to register to vote. This seems like common sense, and you wouldn't think there'd be a lot of pushback on this, but nevertheless, there is. Let's go into what those reasons are. To provide proof of citizenship, basically only two documents are commonly accepted. Number one would be a U.S. passport, which if you do not have, you can obtain by filing Form DS-11, and you have to file this in person at certain passport accepting locations. For most of my clients who have naturalized and become American citizens, they usually do this at like the post office. Number two, the other acceptable proof of citizenship would be your American birth certificate if you were born in the U.S., or if you have another form of naturalization certificate. A standard driver's license, even those with real IDs, would not qualify. In 44 of the 50 states do not have driver's licenses that serve as proof of U.S. citizenship. Again, keep in mind that the Save America Act would apply solely to federal elections. Number two, the Save America Act requires photo ID to vote. So while part one that I spoke about pertained to documents required to register to vote, part number two, in order for you to actually cast a ballot, you would need to present a photo identification. Number three, the Save America Act requires states to purge voter registrations of all non-citizens. Again, in my opinion, this sounds like common sense. And for non-citizens, this is incredibly beneficial for those who were registered to vote, who never actually voted in any federal elections, who would benefit from having their names purged from the rolls. Moreover, it would also be beneficial for U.S. federal elections to not have non-citizens, people who are not authorized to vote, purged from the voter rolls. Lastly, the Save America Act requires criminal penalties for those who participate in voter fraud or in any sort of actions which perpetuate voter fraud. Specifically, election workers could face up to 5 years in prison for registering someone to vote who does not present proof of citizenship. And of course, along that same vein, non-citizens who register to vote would also face consequences. All right, before I get into the immigration side of the Save America Act, I just want to say for the record, I'm not trying to come across this at all from any sort of political lens. I completely understand the importance of wanting to make sure that elections are secure and that citizens are able to cast a vote at the same time and to make their voices heard. The purpose of this is just to simply share the facts and share objectively what are the results that could happen to non-citizens who register or who actually vote in federal elections. I think anybody who has followed the news as it pertains to elections have heard, I'd say, a lot of wild anecdotes on both sides, and my goal today is to try and share some objective information of what that looks like. All right, first, let's talk about why non-citizens end up registered to vote in the first place. So number one, if you're a green card holder, if you're a lawful permanent resident and you're here in the U.S., you should absolutely not register or actually vote in any federal elections under any circumstances. This is definitely a violation of U.S. immigration law, and U.S. federal election law. This could negatively impact your ability to apply for a green card renewal or to apply for citizenship in the future. Honestly, in my experience, the vast majority of non-citizens that I have worked with who have been in this unfortunate situation have done so inadvertently. They did so without any knowledge or purpose of doing so. I'm going to share with you just a couple of examples. I had a client in the past who was participating in some like pie throwing contest at a university, and while on campus participating in this pie throwing contest resulted in registering to vote. You got some sort of t-shirt or some sort of prizes for doing so. And they didn't ask anything about immigration status as a part of registration. So my client innocently enough signed up for this and came to find out years later that she had been registered to vote as a lawful permanent resident and not as a U.S. citizen, which is not permissible. So for those who don't know, when you actually apply for citizenship on the N400 application, one of the questions it asks in the eligibility form is if you have ever registered or actually voted in violation of federal, state, or local elections. In case it was not clear from my statements earlier, if you have registered to vote or have actually voted when you are a non-citizen, this can have seriously negative implications. Fortunately, in my client's case, she had not actually ever cast a ballot. She had just been registered to vote without her knowledge, and she was able to submit notarized affidavits confirming this fact, explaining her circumstances, and proving that she had never actually cast a ballot in any election. My client's circumstances are not unique, though. These types of, let's say, voter registration mass events are quite common in community outreach events, obviously on college campuses. I've even seen these sorts of initiatives in the front of like grocery stores at like Walmart when you're walking in. Another common scenario that this happens is at the DMV. Across the US, I know there are certain states that are worse offenders than others. Across the US, voter registrations happen at the DMV, and a lot of times DMV workers do not ask about US immigration status, and this could also result in inadvertent or innocent registration. The third scenario that I do see here, which is unfortunately a serious issue, is that some local elections do allow non-citizens to participate. And if there is an overlap there with registration for federal elections, this is going to run afoul of federal law. I've also seen similar treatment here with regards to marijuana or cannabis use. Even if you are from a state that allows for the recreational use of marijuana, this is still a violation of U.S. federal law. And if you admit to the legal use of marijuana in those legal jurisdictions, that does not matter for U.S. federal law standards. You're still going to be found inadmissible. Similarly, voting or participating in a local election and then registering or actually voting in a federal election, that can be a serious problem. All right, let's talk about the consequences if you are a non-citizen and you have actually cast a ballot and you have actually voted in a federal election. Number one, you're likely going to be placed in removal proceedings. Removal proceedings is just a fancy way of saying you're going to be put before an immigration judge who's going to try and deport you. So under current U.S. law, this is not under the Save America Act. This is not going to be changed at all. A non-citizen who actually casts a ballot to vote in violation of U.S. federal law can be placed in removal proceedings. Even if you've been a green card holder, permanent resident for 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever amount of years it's been, that's still going to render you as deportable. One other important thing to keep in mind with voting in violation of federal law is that there's no waiver available. There are certain violations that you can do just transparently here that you can be forgiven for, even for certain criminal offenses. Even if you've committed a crime involving moral turpitude, you can apply for something called a petty offense exception. There are many, many ways to obtain forgiveness for many things in U.S. immigration law. One of them in which there is no waiver available is voting in violation of U.S. federal law in a federal election. There's no hardship waiver available. There's no extreme and exceptionally unusual standard that you can prove in order to be forgiven for this. You are straight out of luck. What's critical here too is that there is no element of intent that can be used as a defense. Voting is generally found to be a general intent crime. You know you are not a U.S. citizen if you actually vote in a federal election. This is going to result in you likely being found as deportable. If you take away nothing else from what I've shared today, I hope I have impressed on your mind the importance of not voting if you are a non-citizen. Even if you're a green card holder, do not register to vote, do not actually vote. This is against the law. and there are significant and serious penalties in doing so. Let's talk about what you should do in light of the Save America Act coming to a vote. What are the implications here? So number one, if you are uncertain at all whether you have been registered to vote or not, and you're not a U.S. citizen, please contact your representatives and have your name removed from the voter registration rolls. You can contact both your county or state election officials and check if your name is there, and then ask that it be removed if it is actually there. You should then prepare any affidavits or supporting evidences that you have in order to demonstrate that you have never actually voted in any election. That's essentially your only saving grace in preventing further issues going forward. If you are a naturalized citizen and you want to participate in voting in the next federal election, I would recommend getting proof of your citizenship as soon as possible. So if you've already gone through the naturalization process, you filed the N-400 form, you would have this certificate of citizenship. If you have misplaced or you have not obtained that certificate yet, but you have already done the process of naturalization, you should file Form N-565 with USCIS. The last application I filed for this for replacement of a citizenship certificate took around 7-8 months for that to come back. So if you file it now in February 2026, you should have that certificate back by midterms, give or take. I mentioned this earlier, but if you want the fastest and most practical proof of U.S. citizenship, I would recommend just applying for a U.S. passport. Again, you just need to prepare and file Form DS-11. I would recommend just taking this to the post office or other qualifying organization. If you are a lawful permanent resident who otherwise qualifies for U.S. citizenship and you don't have any pre-existing issues that could prevent you from obtaining citizenship and you'd like to apply, it's actually quite a straightforward process. You just need to file Form N-400 with USCIS. You can even do this online. You don't need an attorney to do this at all. Whether the Save America Act actually passes the House and the Senate is signed by the president or not, it's important to remember that elections have consequences. If you are a non-citizen and you'd like to be involved in the voter process, you'd like to be involved in the process of democracy, you will need to go through the proper channels of obtaining permanent residence and obtaining U.S. citizenship lawfully. If you register to vote or if you actually vote in any federal election, this can and very likely will have significantly negative consequences for your immigration status going forward. If you need any help with any other immigration issue, feel free to reach out, drop a like or a comment if you have anything you'd like me to answer. And if not, until next time, thank you.